Introducing Jim Alkove, CEO and co-founder at Oleria. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, good to see you, mate. I know we spoke last week, but where have you flown in from today?
I flew in from Denver recently. My daughter's going to school there, and so I was helping move.
Oh, okay.
Her senior year of college.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're kicking off the conference. I know you're only my second guest of the show. So have you had a busy one so far, or?
So far, not so much. Just dinner last night, and today everything's getting busy. So.
Yeah. When are you flying out?
Friday morning.
Brilliant. Well, Jim, great to have you on. I was pretty impressed by your LinkedIn profile when I looked at it. It was like multiple advisor for various startups. I saw like 50 patents, probably 50 plus now. I don't know when that was written from an innovation perspective. So to get the audience a bit of an idea about who you are, can you tell us how you got into the industry and where it all began?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anyone that's been successful in any industry, I've had a lot of luck in my history. And I'd say that luck started sort of as I left college. I was an electrical engineering student at Purdue, and so I kind of got started in technology pretty early in my career. I fell in the love of computers when I was young, and but I kind of had this dream of going to work at Microsoft, and so I packed up, and my wife and I moved to Seattle, Redmond, Washington, without a job at Microsoft to try to get a job at Microsoft, and so that began my sort of career in the industry. And I was lucky because I started at Microsoft, and when you're right out of college, they put you into something to work on. In my case, it was internet payments. And so there's a very big tie-in between security and internet payments. There's a lot of cryptography and early in internet payments back when Visa was doing secure electronic transactions, smart card payments in the late 1990s. And so, and again, like many things, you kind of fall into the next thing in your career. So I went from that to building digital rights management systems. So moving video and music around the internet in the Napster era. And that sort of led me to anti-piracy for gaming. And so I became the chief security officer for Xbox. I got to do that for most of my career. The rest of my career, 17 years at Microsoft, I just took on some additional responsibility later in my career, taking on commercial Windows and security for Windows, which I sort of made the shift into more general security as part of my Xbox job and Windows jobs. And then have since worked on IoT at Google and became a CISO. So my biggest transition was like becoming a CISO at Salesforce, the last part of my career. And I think that really was the thing that tipped it over for me and led me to decide to want to start a company and try to serve CISOs.
Yeah, I love it. So the Microsoft 17 years, what a run. You said about luck. I do believe that you create your own luck, but how was that as an experience? Because that is a long run.
Yeah, I think we create part of our own luck. I think that you need to make a good set of choices. I think the other thing that we also underappreciate is what the role sort of sponsors and mentors play. And I had a lot of great sponsors and mentors at Microsoft, and it was an incredible run. Microsoft's an incredible company, and I think it's a factory that creates high quality engineers. It's the living and working there really helps you become a great engineer at scale. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that phase of my career helped solidify my technical abilities, which have served me well for the rest of my career. And so, I would encourage folks to think, as they think about what you want to get out of your job, always make a list of what you really want out of the job, not just a paycheck, but like, what do I really want to, what changes in myself do I want to make as part of being in that job?
Yeah, nice. When did the inspiration for Oleria come about then?
I would say the inspiration of Oleria is really a reaction to the pain I felt. Both in my time at Microsoft, I had two hats that I wore in my time at Microsoft. I was the head of commercial Windows and security for Windows on the product side, but I was also logically the CISO for the Windows and Devices division at Microsoft. And so I had the back-end operational security for all the hundreds of thousands of servers that back up Windows. And so I lived sort of a lot of pain and identity there. And then as I was this chief trust officer for Salesforce, I really felt that when I looked at my overall program, I had a tremendous amount of resources, I had lots of sponsorship from the CEO and the board of directors at Salesforce, large team of individuals working on security, but the marketplace was really just not delivering solutions that I needed. I couldn't get a comprehensive view of all of the access inside of the company in one place for myself. And that managing it required a very large number of humans to sort of go system by system and control access. And that pain was really the thing that led me, after I retired from my job as a CISO, to decide to start a company. And for me, it's a mission, it's a service. How do I build the technology that the industry really needs to make CISOs' lives better and deliver better outcomes for customers, so that data breaches, the scope of data breaches can start to go down. We really need to change the game as it relates to data breaches.
Yeah. In terms of the problem, because I know I saw a post, I'm going to quote it. It was identity security is the new cybersecurity battlefield or battlefront. Absolutely love that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that post?
Well, I think that as defenders, one of the things that's really important for us to do is look at what our adversaries are doing. And there are adversaries in the security space tend to come in categories: nation state actors. We have cyber criminals. We have hacktivists. We have what are known as script kiddies, people who are sort of just cloning other people's attacks, just to see if they for fun and profit. And what you need to do is look at what's happening with these various categories of threat actors. And I think they make T-shirts that say this now. It's hackers don't need to hack in; they just log in. And you really have seen this massive shift in threat actor activity. At the first entry point into most major data breaches is compromised identity, lack of multi-factor on an account. Look at the recent AT&T breach and the other breaches that are adjacent to Snowflake's people's lack of using multi-factor authentication for accounts in Snowflake, or Midnight Blizzard, the recent attack on Microsoft. Yeah. All of them start with identity. And so when we say that that's the battleground, it really is the place that we see attackers moving. And also we feel like it's a weak spot for defenders, because we have to be right everywhere. So understanding every single identity in the enterprise and making sure that it's properly secured is essential for defenders. Attackers only need to be right once.
Yeah, I saw that a stat, I think it was 80% of breaches are from compromised identities. Is that about right?
Yeah, the most recent CrowdStrike threat report would say 80%. I'd say as a defender, it feels like it's more than 80% right now. If you look at the news, it feels like it's more than 80. I know there are breaches that are happening for other reasons, but it definitely feels like it's more than that. And when you couple that with a Microsoft study that would say that 95% of the standing permissions that people have in enterprises today go completely unused. So when an attacker compromises an account, they have pretty broad access to the systems inside the company with just compromise of one single account. Much less if they were able to use that account to sort of compromise a few other accounts. You can see how quickly the scope of the impact that they can have grows. And that's why you see these broad impact breaches happening, even with the entry point being a single compromised account.
Yeah. Before we get into Oleria then, why is the legacy tools not working?
Well, I think everybody has an opinion about this. So in my case, I'd say that if you think about most identity tools, and this is sort of what got us here, identity tools tended to be built as an IT management and compliance tool, not as a for security first tool. So if you go back 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when a lot of these tools were first being created, they were being made just to operationally, you showed up at your company, you needed to make sure you got your account in the systems, you got your nameplate mailed to your desk, you got your badge, the business cards, those kind of things. And so if you think about identity governance, for example, those workflows were not just about giving you accounts and systems, they were about all of the other things that needed to be provisioned to you inside of the corporation. And so they're targeted toward IT organizations. How do we make the onboarding process smooth and efficient? Less about how do we make sure that we're dramatically reducing the threat to the damage was caused by threat actors. And so I think we get started there, and then the secondary effect of that is that the world has really shifted from on-premise technology to SaaS and public cloud, and the identity technology just hasn't accelerated to keep pace with that change in our state. Lots of people still have a lot of on-premise technology, which is hard to manage, and then the tools that they did have to manage that are not applicable to the cloud. And so there's just been this big shift to the cloud. And we need identity tools to scale up to the cloud and SaaS, but also not forget that huge amounts of sensitive information are still stored on-prem. Recently talked to a prospective customer who's still running systems in mainframes. And so how do you make sure that the access for information that's stored in mainframes is also protected? Identity players need to think holistically about this, because our customers, the CISOs, need to think holistically about it.
How has your experience as a CISO massively helped then on that front?
Yeah, I would say it's been transformational. If I had it to go back, and I led the security for Windows 10, and it was the fastest commercially adopted version of Windows in the history of the company. So I'm very proud of the work the team did in Windows 10 from a security perspective. But if I could go back, knowing what I know now after 5.5 years sitting in the Chief Trust Officer chair at Salesforce, I would do a lot of things differently. I think that I would focus much more on tools being easy to deploy, quick time to value. Many of the tools that are out there today still cost millions of dollars and take months or years to deploy, and they're expensive to manage, and therefore they don't get managed well. So I would rethink the way the tools are operationalized. I think that a lot of engineers, product people have very good ideas about how to build a piece of technology, and they have less experience understanding how to operationalize that technology in the customer's environment. And that's the huge gap that I see with a lot of the systems today. It's like, how do you make your technology made up directly with your customers' processes? So I learned a ton as a CISO, and I would encourage, if nothing else, shadow a CISO. Go really understand what they do day to day in their lives, because I think many of product vendors out there don't really have a good sense. That's why they're hiring so many CISOs as advisors. And
You've got an unfair advantage, I'd say. So tell us a little bit more about Oleria. How are you tackling this straight on?
So, I started Oleria to sort of change the game with respect to the way identity was managed in organizations. We talked about, there's compromised identities are a leading cause of data breaches. There's a massive amount of permissions in organizations that are going unused. There's no single point of visibility or single point of control for access in the enterprise today. And I wanted to sort of bring forward a platform that would address all of those things. So at Oleria, we have a platform we call TrustFusion. The job of that platform is to connect to all of your systems, bring all of the identity information together in a single source of truth for your enterprise, and then give you intelligence on top of that, and then the ability to run automation, automated management, automated response on top of that. We have a framework, we say visibility, intelligence, action, the ability to sort of comprehensively understand all of your access, give visibility into that, be able to get recommendations, intelligent recommendations on how to remove and reduce access risks, for example, unused access or over-permissioned access, or misconfigured access. And then finally, don't just tell people that there's something wrong, have the tool fix it for them. Lots of the tools on the market today, CISOs will tell you, they generate lots of tickets, they generate a lot of noise for their organization to handle, but there aren't enough people to manage all that manually. So we need the technology to step up and actually start to orchestrate these remediations for customers. And that's where I feel like, there's a lot of talk about AI in the cybersecurity industry, and I think AI will play a huge role, both defensively, helping defenders, but also it's helping attackers. But I do believe that orchestration, the ability for AI to take the place of humans typing on keyboards and clicking mouses in workflows, is going to be one of the places where there's the most disruption in security, but also in other areas of IT. And so, we see the future of managing identity as autonomous orchestration by an intelligent piece of software.
Yeah. So say 20 years ago to now, the evolution of the space, the landscape, the threat actors, it's all evolving massively. What has been like for you the biggest change in the last sort of 20 years since you first, well, maybe even longer, I guess, but yeah, what's been the biggest change for you?
Well, I think the changes have happened in several dimensions. It's always, I think, in taxonomy. So how do we break this down into dimensions of change? Because change happens in lots of ways. I think if you can think about what are the core dimensions of change, then you can break it down and start to analyze it and understand what you need to do about it. The first is that more and more of organizations' day-to-day business has now transitioned to technology. Many processes that were manual or paper-based or other things have all sort of migrated to technology. Mm-hmm. So the complexity of the technology estates in organizations has exploded, right? So one dimension is just the technical complexity of the technology estates that we have. The other dimension is sort of technical architecture change, from mainframe to on-premise hardware and software to public cloud, SaaS, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. So that dimension of there's this big architectural shift that's going on. I think parallel to that, there is a shift in the way the fundamental technologies available to vendors to build to build solutions on. So in the case of identity, it is fundamentally a graph native problem. But if you look back historically, with just like AI, compute and the technology wasn't available to do it effectively 20 years ago. You fast forward to today, graph databases are used pretty broadly in various organizations for things like fraud and things like that. So the technology has shifted in a way that now you can take advantage of underlying platform enhancements to make better solutions for customers. And so when you look at all of those and put them together, it informs what, for example, the direction that we're taking and building products at Oleria.
What's your take on AI?
AI is going to be an incredibly transformational force. I just think that we don't have a high degree of confidence in the dimensions that it's going to change our lives. It's going to change our lives dramatically. It's definitely going to impact jobs, but it's going to impact jobs, I think, in ways that people aren't predicting. I think everybody thinks about it like eliminating jobs, and I think it's changing jobs. And then I also think it's going to create jobs. They're just going to be different jobs than the ones that we have today. And so how do we get ourselves ready for that coming change? And one of the biggest jobs we as technologists had to do is sort of predict, at least piecewise, where the biggest change from AI is going to happen in the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year sort of time horizon. And I think the changes will be smaller. We always sort of underestimate what we can do in 10 years and overestimate what we can do in 5 years. And so I think we're in that place with AI. In 10 years, the world will look so dramatically different than it does today. I think it would surprise even some of the most astute technologists. But at the same time, I think we're overestimating the change that's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 or 3 years. I'd be happy to be wrong if our lives get better faster, but I do think we're overestimating how quickly it's going to change.
Yeah. What's the future for Oleria? I know we're pretty early on in the journey, but I know you're very mission driven. What's the future for you guys?
Well, I think about it from my customer's perspective. And so what the future that I'd like to have, in the product management world and software, we talk about thinking in press quotes. And so what I'd like people to see as a legacy of Oleria is that the scope and scale of data breaches is decreased because of the efficacy of identity programs that come from tools like Oleria. And so if I can have that impact on the world, then I'll be very, very happy. That the damage from data breaches, there will likely still be data breaches in the future. I think that preventing them completely is an unlikely scenario. But by moving the world to a place where we can more effectively manage access, we can decrease the blast radius of those data breaches in a way that less people are impacted by any individual breach. And that's the mission sort of that I'm on. And all the while helping companies continue to accelerate their business. Technology is meant to be a business enabler. And I think the security, especially identity technology, say holds businesses back. We slow business programs down because the security team can't keep up with provisioning access for those programs. I've lived that firsthand as a CISO. And I think that the other aspect of what we're trying to do, we always think at Oleria in two missions. One is reducing security risk, and the other is how do we accelerate business agility and business, the speed with which businesses can innovate. So the other axis of impact that I want to really have going forward is that businesses feel like they can move faster with their business programs because the security and the identity is not getting in the way.
Yeah. To finish this up, I know you do a lot of advisory with other startups and are very helpful. What's the best advice you've ever had?
I think that the best advice that I've ever had, I'll pick time recency bias. It was that as a startup founder, there's a million things that you want to accomplish early on, but that when you're an early stage startup, product usage, customer really using your product every day is really paramount. I focus very heavily on how do I get the product into customers' hands. You can talk about revenue, you can talk about lots of different axes to measure your business by, but the one that you really sort of live and die by today, as a startup when you're early, as we are, is just how broadly adopted is your product and how much of your customers use it on a day-to-day basis, and that really is the thing that I spend a lot of my energy on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jim. I wish you all the best of success. Thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this very special BlackHat 2024 edition of CyberBytes, the podcast. If you did enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues and friends. If you're a candidate looking for a new role or a hiring manager looking for their next technical or go-to-market hire, then please reach out directly or via our company email, info@ asperonsearch.com.